The Champions League as we knew it is officially gone, and while fans were distracted by flashy announcements and promises of more big games, a silent revolution was happening behind the scenes, one that could completely destroy the dominance of Europe's biggest clubs. Because the new Champions League format isn't designed to protect giants, like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Manchester City, Barcelona, or PSG anymore. It's designed to expose them, pressure them, and in many cases eliminate them earlier than ever before. And to understand why this is so dangerous for big clubs, we need to understand exactly what changed. Because starting with the new league phase format, the traditional group stage is gone, replaced by a single 36-team league table where every club plays 8 different opponents, instead of facing 3 teams twice. And on paper that sounds exciting, but in reality it creates chaos. Because big clubs no longer get the safety net of an easy group, where they can recover from one bad result. Instead, they're thrown into a brutal schedule where every single match matters. And one slip up against a so-called smaller club can send shockwaves through their entire season, because only the top 8 teams qualify automatically. For the round of 16, while teams ranked 9th to 24th are forced into dangerous knockout playoffs. And this is where big clubs are at massive risk, because historically, elite teams relied on consistency across 6 group games. But now they must perform under constant pressure, across 8 different tactical challenges, 8 different stadiums, and 8 different styles of football, which means more travel, less recovery, and far more unpredictability. And this unpredictability is exactly what hurts big clubs the most. Because when you're a giant, everyone raises their level against you. Every underdog treats the match like a final, presses harder, defends deeper, and plays with nothing to lose, while big clubs carry the weight of expectation, media pressure, and financial consequences. And if a club, like Real Madrid, loses one unexpected away match in this new format, it's no longer just a bad night. It could be the difference between finishing 8th or finishing 15th, which means 2 extra knockout games, more injuries, more fatigue, and a higher chance of elimination before the later stages even begin. And this is where the calendar becomes a nightmare. Because the new Champions League adds more matches, not fewer, which means players are pushed to their physical limits. And while smaller squads may rotate freely, big clubs with star-dependent systems suffer the most. When key players are injured or exhausted, because you can't replace a Ballon d'Or level player with a backup and expect the same output. And when fatigue sets in, performance drops. And when performance drops in this new format, punishment is immediate because there is no margin for error. And then there's the financial illusion. Because UEFA claims this format benefits big clubs financially, but that's only true if they consistently qualify for the later rounds. And what happens if a giant finishes 15th and gets knocked out in the playoff round? Suddenly they've played more games for less reward, spent more on wages, travel, and bonuses, and lost massive broadcasting revenue, tied to quarterfinals and semifinals. And sponsors don't pay for participation. They pay for exposure in the biggest matches, which means early exits hurt brand value more than ever before. And this leads to another major issue, squad imbalance, because big clubs are now forced to build deeper squads to survive the schedule, but deeper squads mean higher wage bills, more unhappy players on the bench, and more dressing room tension, which historically has been one of the biggest reasons elite teams collapse internally. And while smaller clubs enjoy the opportunity to rotate and give chances to hungry players, big clubs struggle to keep superstars satisfied when rotation becomes necessary. And then comes the tactical evolution, because facing 8 different teams instead of 3 means you must constantly adapt tactically. And big clubs built on identity football, possession dominance, eye lines are pressing systems, now face opponents who specifically prepare to exploit them. And one tactical weakness exposed early can be copied by multiple teams later in the league phase, creating a domino effect where giants are repeatedly punished for the same flaw. And this has already happened historically in knockout competitions. But now it happens across the entire league phase, making it impossible to hide weaknesses. And let's not forget the psychological impact, because big clubs thrive on control, predictability, and experience. But this format removes control completely, because even the draw system creates imbalance, where one big club might face multiple strong opponents, while another gets a relatively easier path. And there's no guarantee of fairness over just 8 matches. And when players and coaches feel the system is unpredictable, confidence drops. And when confidence drops at elite level, performance collapses quickly. And then there's the pressure on managers, Because one poor Champions League run can now destroy a season, and big clubs don't give managers time, which means coaches may prioritize short-term survival over long-term development, leading to conservative tactics, less creativity, and more boring football, ironically hurting the product UEFA claims to improve, and fans are already questioning whether this format truly rewards. The best teams are simply the most adaptable and lucky ones, because football at the highest level is decided by fine margins, refereeing decisions, injuries, and moments of brilliance. And the more games you play under pressure, the more likely randomness decides your fate. And randomness is the enemy of dominance, because dominance requires stability, and this format removes stability completely, and if that wasn't enough, the knockout playoff round adds another layer of danger, because teams ranked 9th to 24th face 2 extra high-pressure matches before even reaching the round of 16, meaning big clubs finishing outside the top 8 face elite opponents earlier than ever, creating heavyweight clashes months before fans expect them. And while this sounds exciting for viewers, it's devastating for Giants because one bad, two-legged tie can end their entire European campaign before spring. And history shows that even the best teams can be eliminated over 2 legs, due to one red card, one injury, or one controversial decision. And now that risk applies to far more clubs than before. And this brings us to the biggest threat of all, the rise of fearless underdogs. Because smaller clubs no longer fear big names, I see opportunity because finishing in the top 24 is achievable, and once you reach the knockout stage, anything can happen, and this belief changes how underdogs play, how they recruit, and how they prepare, which levels the playing field more than ever before. And when belief spreads, dominance fades. And that's exactly what UEFA wants. A competition where giants are no longer guaranteed deep runs, where narratives change every season, where new heroes emerge but for big clubs. This is a nightmare scenario, because their entire business model is built on predictability, on Champions League nights in April and May, on global exposure, and on trophies that justify massive spending. And if those guarantees disappear, financial pressure increases, fan patience decreases, and internal instability grows. And we've already seen signs of this in domestic leagues, where fixture congestion has led to injuries, inconsistent performances, and shock results. And now that chaos is amplified on the biggest stage, in world football, and the question is no longer whether big clubs will suffer under this format, but how often and how badly, because sooner or later a giant will collapse early. And when it happens, fans will finally realize that this new Champions League format wasn't designed to protect football royalty. It was designed to test them, expose them, and in some cases destroy them. And the scariest part is that once the cycle begins, there may be no way back. Because football has entered an era where reputation means nothing, history guarantees nothing, and survival depends on adaptability, death, and relentless consistency. And for the biggest clubs in the world, that might be the most dangerous change of all. The new Champions League format is being sold to fans as the future of football. More games, more excitement, more drama, but hidden beneath the shiny marketing is a brutal reality that could slowly dismantle the dominance of Europe's biggest clubs. Because this format is not built for stability, it's built for chaos. And chaos is the one thing giant clubs fear the most. Because for decades, teams like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, Manchester City, PSG, Juventus, and Liverpool thrived under a system that rewarded consistency, experience, and squad superiority. But the new league phase system removes nearly every safety net they once relied on, replacing the traditional group stage with a 36-team league, where each club plays 8 different opponents only once, 4 at home and 4 away. And while that sounds fair on the surface, it creates an environment where randomness has more power than ever before. Because in the old format, a big club could lose a game, just dominate the return fixture, and still qualify comfortably. But now there is no return fixture. No chance for revenge, no tactical correction over 2 legs. Just one night where everything must go right. And when everything doesn't go right, the consequences are immediate and severe. Because the difference between finishing 8th and finishing 15th could come down to a single goal, a single refereeing decision, or a single injury. And that is terrifying for clubs, whose entire season planning revolves around reaching the later stages of the Champions League. And the pressure this creates on players and managers is enormous. Because suddenly, every match feels like a knockout. And when every match feels like a knockout, fear creeps in creativity drops and mistakes increase, especially for big clubs, who know that failure in Europe often leads to sackings, squad overhauls, and public humiliation. And the new qualification system only makes this worse, because only the top 8 teams qualify directly for the round of 16, while positions 9 to 24 are forced into an additional playoff round, which means that a club finishing 9th after 8 exhausting games could still face elimination before even reaching the traditional knockout phase. And those extra matches are not free opportunities. They are high-intensity, two-legged battles against strong opponents who have nothing to lose. And history has already shown us that big clubs struggle the most in high-pressure playoff scenarios because one red card, one defensive error, or one missed penalty can end everything. And this format increases the number of moments where disaster can strike. And then there's the fixture congestion problem, which might be the most dangerous element of all. Because elite clubs already play domestic leagues, domestic cups, international breaks, and preseason tours. And now UEFA has added more Champions League matches into an already overcrowded calendar, which means players are pushed beyond their physical limits. And when elite players break down physically, big clubs suffer more than anyone else. Because their systems are often built around a few world-class individuals, and losing one superstar can completely change the balance of a team. While smaller clubs are often more collective, more adaptable, and more resilient, and this physical toll leads directly to injuries, fatigue, and inconsistent performances, which are deadly in a format where consistency across 8 matches against different opponents is the only path to safety. And financially, while UEFA promises increased revenue, the truth is far more complicated, because that money only truly benefits clubs that reach the later stages. And if a giant club is eliminated earlier, stuck playing extra playoff games, the financial gain is offset by higher expenses, increased wages, performance bonuses, travel costs, and most importantly, lost commercial value because sponsors, broadcasters, and global fans are drawn to semi-final and final nights, not early round exits. And when a giant club disappears from the competition before spring, the financial shockwaves are felt immediately, leading to pressure from owners, boardrooms, and investors, which then translates into rushed decisions, panic signings, and unstable long-term planning. And instability is the silent killer of dominance. And the new format actively encourages instability by increasing uncertainty every single season. And tactically, the challenge becomes even more brutal, because instead of preparing for 3 familiar opponents, managers must prepare for 8 completely different tactical styles, pressing systems, defensive blocks, counter-attacking approaches, and game plans, often with limited recovery time between matches. And big clubs, known for a specific football identity, are now constantly targeted, because once one opponent exposes a weakness, others will replicate it. And over the course of 8 games, those weaknesses become impossible to hide. And psychologically, the shift is devastating because elite teams are used to control. They are used to dictating tempo, dominating possession, and wearing opponents down over 2 legs. But this format removes that comfort, forcing them into situations where they must chase results, protect goal differences, and calculate league positions in real time, which increases mental fatigue and decision-making errors. And when elite players begin to overthink, their performances suffer, and the coaching pressure reaches unbearable levels. Because one poor Champions League run can now define a manager's legacy at a big club, leading to short-term tactics, conservative football, and risk avoidance, which ironically makes teams easier to play against. And fans sense this fear creating negativity in stadiums and online, which further affects player confidence. And meanwhile, smaller clubs are thriving in this environment because they enter matches without fear, knowing that one big result can change their entire campaign. And this belief transforms underdogs into genuine threats. Because when you remove fear, you unlock intensity, discipline, and bravery. And once underdogs realize they can finish in the top 24 and reach knockout rounds, the psychological gap between giants and outsiders shrinks dramatically. And that is something football has never truly seen at this scale before, and the draw system itself adds another layer of imbalance. Because not every big club faces the same difficulty.